Hi, welcome to Bradley the Singing Chef. Today I am so excited to share with you a family recipe that I love and is near and dear to my heart. This is my granny's homemade yeast rolls. These were served at every family gathering at my mom's parents' house when I was growing up, whether it was a special occasion or just whatever dinner was being served. These rolls showed up. Now there are several steps to these rolls, which makes me appreciate and love my granny even more for taking the time to do that every time I came to visit. And I think you are going to love these. So let's get to it. No shame here. I'm going to follow her recipe from start to finish as best I can. So if you see me glancing down, I'm just checking the recipe to make sure I'm doing this exactly right. Okay, the first thing we need is a cup of shortening. Shortening, much like butter, is on hand in giant portions in my home, as you can imagine, being the southern boy that I am. So just gonna get a cup measure, mash that down in there. Yeah, that should be it. And I'm gonna put that into my stand mixer. I've got two different arms on my stand mixer that I'm going to use today. The first one is just the normal paddle for if you were going to make a cake or whatever, and then I'm going to switch over to my dough hook to help me with the kneading process. Otherwise I would be kneading it by hand for a very, very long time. Okay, I can put the shortening over to the side. I'm finished with that. Wipe off my hands a little bit. Okay, to the shortening, I'm going to add a half a cup of white sugar. Let's get that nice and even off the top. Half a cup of sugar goes into the bowl, along with some salt, and we are going to use a full tablespoon of salt. So I've got my half tablespoon measure. There's a half, and a whole tablespoon. Now, I'm going to go ahead and turn on my stand mixer with the paddle attachment to mix all of that together while I get going on some other things. Okay, so turn that on about medium speed just to get all the sugar and the salt incorporated into the shortening. Now, once you see that is all pretty well mixed together, kind of gets a little fluffy, you can turn that down, and here I have a cup of boiling water. I just boiled some water on my stovetop, and once it was boiled, put it into a glass measuring cup to make sure that I had a cup of that. I'm going to add the boiling water to that. Mix a little bit of that together. You got to be careful on speed because the shortening, which I'm going to scrape down on the sides of the bowl, sloshing together with the water, could make a mess. So just be careful. Don't go too high on the speed on your electric mixer to get all of that mixed together. Just going to leave that on low speed while I keep moving over here. This actually needs to cool before I add other things to it, so I'm just going to leave that stand mixer going to get that word together and then let it cool. In a separate bowl, I have another cup of water, but it's just lukewarm water out of the tap or your filter or what have you. And to that cup of water, I'm going to add some fast-acting instant yeast. 2 packets. These packets you can buy in pretty much any store. It's a 1/4 ounce package of the Rapid Rise instant yeast. I'm going to add 2 of those packets to that cup of warm water. here, there's one. Second one into the bowl. Perfect. I'm just going to add the tiniest little pinch of some sugar to feed that yeast. All right. Get that water and yeast kind of going together in this little side bowl so it can start to grow for me. That is going to be the raising agent in this dough. It's also going to have that beautiful kind of yeasty, sour flavor to the dough as well. Alrighty. So, I feel like, just test. Yeah, I think that's getting pretty cooled down. The reason you need to let this cool a little bit and that stand mixer whirring it around kind of helps that out is the next thing that we're going to add are some eggs. And we don't want that hot water, the boiling water that we added to cook the eggs. Okay, so my yeast is over there doing its thing. Now I'm going to add my eggs. Got 2 eggs here that I'm going to... I've also found that eggs in general for baking are better if you take them out of the fridge and let them come to kind of room temperature before you bake with them, just for temperature's sake. So that's what I did, left them out on the counter for a little bit. And I'm going to add these one at a time to the shortening mixture as I continue to put it together. There goes one egg. Looking good. Let it go for a little bit. Turn it down to put that second egg in the mix. And the mixer does all the work of the scrambling, of getting those eggs beaten anyway. Not scrambling. You don't want scrambled eggs. You do want beaten eggs. Alrighty. Great, so that's the majority of my liquid. The last thing I need to add is that yeasty concoction that we had over here with our lukewarm water and a tiniest bit of sugar just to feed the yeast a little bit. That's going to go in. Again, I'm just going to use this, scrape out all the yeast because we want all of that in our dough to make sure that they rise. Okay. Put that over here, out of my way. And again, combine all of that together. If you need to go in again and scrape down the sides of the bowl, sometimes your shortening is going to stick on the sides if your paddle attachment doesn't get it all. But you want to make sure you got everything down in the pool. Perfect. And back to mixing. Okay, now my granny's recipe actually calls to use 4.5 to 5 cups or so of all-purpose flour. You could use bread flour, but I am not tempting fate and using anything other than what my granny's recipe says. So I'm using all-purpose today. And the 4.5 to 5, give or take, is kind of to figure out what's going to give you the best feeling dough that is going to be handleable once it is all kneaded together. So I'm going to turn this baby down. I've got a 1/2 cup measure here, so 1/2 cup at a time. I'm going to start adding all-purpose flour into the bowl. There's a 1/2. One cup. Get that going. Here's my 2nd cup of flour. Oh my gosh, it smells so good already. Just that yeast, so good. So you can't even handle it. It's starting to get really, really smooth in my mixing bowl. Here's my third cup of flour. Incorporate that. Now I told you there are several steps in this recipe. We're going to actually, once we get all this dough together and kneaded, we're going to put it into a bowl, cover it and put it in the fridge until I'm ready to actually cook it. And before I'm ready to cook it, 2 hours prior at least, I'm going to take out the dough, roll it out, cut it with a biscuit cutter and put those into muffin tins and let them rise in the muffin tins for 2 hours minimum, okay? Fourth cup of flour. Careful with your speed immediately after you add the flour or you'll be wearing it. Pass the sides of my bowl. Put some flour down. This will be the 5th cup, so I'm going to do a half at a time, just to see where I am with creating this dough, getting it to look like I want it to look. Another half. This makes a big batch of rolls, but let me tell you, you can eat them any time of the day. Believe me, I have. So it's totally okay that you have a giant batch. Okay, that is starting to look pretty darn good. Look at that dough starting to fall off of my beater, just what I want to happen. Yeah, all right. I think I need a little bit more flour into the mix. Let's do another half cup and see how we do. Maybe just a 1/4 of a cup first. You'll see the dough starts pulling away from the sides of the bowl. That to me is your sign that you're pretty darn close on how much flour you need. All right. Take your spoon, knock down the dough off of that beater attachment. Everything in there. Yeah. Now, at this point, if you didn't have a dough hook for your mixer as an attachment, you can actually add a lot more flour so that it's handleable and you can knead it by hand on your bench. But I am just going to add a little bit more to make sure it's good to go. And then I've got my dough hook attachment that is going to go onto my stand mixer and help me knead this dough together. And like I said, you'll see the dough start pulling away. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Shaking my entire bench like there's no cooking. And I want to knead this dough for a good, I don't know, between 5 and 10 minutes. I just want to let it continue to knead. If I see that it's still too liquid, I'll continue adding a little bit of flour at a time to make sure that it's pulling away still from the sides and incorporating in that dough. I'm going to let this go for several more minutes. I'll let you know how long it takes when I come back. See you in a bit. Hey y'all, I am back. I let my dough knead on the kneading hook for at least about 5 minutes. Continually adding a little bit of flour at a time until it got to where I thought I wanted it as a stiff dough that isn't tacky really to the touch anymore. So I can now take off my dough hook, Get that out of my way. And then what I've done is I've taken a little bit of flour and I've just put it in the bottom of this mixing bowl, just to kind of dust around the sides of the bowl. If there's excess in there, that's totally fine. And then I'm just going to take my dough that I made and I'm going to let it pour right out of the bowl. If there's anything on the sides, you can certainly scrape that down to pull that into the mix too. Great. Now, I am not serving these rolls for a while now, so I'm actually going to cover this and refrigerate it until 2 hours prior to serving. At that point, I'll take the dough out, I'll put it into some muffin tins, just cutting out little biscuit cutter worth of them and put them into greased muffin tins. And then those in the tins need to rise for at least 2 hours before you're ready to bake them. So I'm gonna cover this, pop it in the fridge, and once we are ready to roll and cut, I will be right back. Hey y'all, I am back, and it is almost 2 hours or so before I need to bake my rolls for dinner tonight. So I've taken my bowl of dough that's been covered out of the fridge. Oh my gosh, it smells so good. I'm gonna take a little bit of flour, just dust my bench here to make sure nothing sticks too much. Spread that out, get my hands in there, then just roll this dough out of the bowl onto the bench. Put this over here to get it out of my way. All right, so there is my dough. Look at that. Oh my gosh, it's so pretty. Can't stand it. All right, so I've got my rolling pin here. Take a little of that flour, coat my rolling pin. I'm just gonna roll out this whole thing of dough. Almost to the sizes I would want a biscuit to be. Nice and even from the center. Perfect. All right. Now, I have taken 2 muffin tins. Each of these hold 3, 6, 9, 12. So a total of 24 is what I'm hoping to get out of this batch of dough. And I have my handy dandy biscuit cutter over here that I made out of literally a tin can. And then like crimped down the edge to make sure there was nothing that was going to cut me. I'm just going to take that, put that down in my flour here, and then I'm going to cut out 24 biscuits, basically, but they're really rolls, and then I'm going to put them into these prepared muffin tins. I've taken Crisco and lined, or any kind of shortening, and lined the muffin tins there. And then I've also given a good spray of cooking spray over everything so that in case the muffins actually overflow the tin, when they rise, I make sure that nothing is going to stick. Put a lot of work into these rolls. You certainly don't want them to stick into your baking pan. All right, so let's just cut a few of these out. We wind up with these little rounds. Then I just place them lightly into the bottom of the tin, just like so. Perfect. Keep on cutting around. Grab some flour if you need it to make sure you don't stick. It's a little thin there. Keep placing these babies in their tins. So I'm going to continue cutting out rolls, putting them in these tins, and then I'm actually going to put the rolls into, my grandmother used to put them on top of her microwave. That was where I would come in the kitchen and they would be resting and rising to be made. I'm gonna actually put mine on top of my fridge because it's kind of the heat from the fridge actually helps the rise, I think. I don't know if that's why she did the microwave, because she wasn't like using the microwave. But anyway, that's where I'm gonna pop mine, cover them with just a little bit of a dish towel to make sure that they stay safe and tucked in. And 2 hours later, I'm gonna take those out. I'm gonna preheat an oven to 450 degrees, and they just need to bake for like 10 to 15 minutes, and they will be perfect and ready for a slab of butter to go in. I'm gonna get these going, continue to get these rising for the next couple of hours, and I'll see you when I've got them out of the oven. Hey y'all, welcome back to Bradley the Singing Chef. I wish you could smell how amazing this kitchen smells from the bread that has been baking in that oven. At 450 degrees, in our prepared tins, those risen biscuits only took about 12 minutes. So check between 10 and 15. Check it on at 10. If they're not brown on top, let them go just a little bit longer. And look at the bounty you wind up with. I mean, come on. Look at those rolls. They're gorgeous and steamy hot. Just break in. Look at that. Come on. So good. I might accidentally have some butter over here so that I can give these a taste right now. Oh my gosh. Just melting the butter. That soft yeast roll. Man. That's why they were on the table all the time at my granny's house. They are fluffy, melt in your mouth with all that butter oozing throughout it. They're perfect. I mean, man, Granny knew what she was doing. I hope you guys will try this recipe. It might look complicated, but actually once you get everything put together and they rise, the oven time is so small. You just need them in the oven right before you're gonna serve. And these are good for dinner. They're good for breakfast. Just pop them into your muffin tin again, slide them in at about 300 degrees, and while that oven even starts to preheat, it'll get them warm all over again for you for the next couple of days. Thank you so much for joining me on Bradley the Singing Chef and for sharing my love of cooking, my love of family. Eat well, love always. Bon appetit, y'all.